Let me play around with it a little bit. What's up, you hooligans? Happy holiday season to ya. Mark with Cardivox Academy here, and today we are doing the highly requested one-take vocal playthrough by Will Ramos of Lorna Shore's Of the Abyss. That is a frickin' mouthful. It's taken us a while to get to it because we had a lot of videos queued up that we wanted to do. We were kind of focusing on getting into different genres of metal. We'll see if we keep doing that. I don't know. But we're kind of getting back to our home base here by getting a little deathcore-y, a little death metal-y. Now, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited to talk about these. I did a video of To the Hellfire back closer to when it came out. You can go check that out if you want. But if you're new to the channel, again, my name is Mark. I'm the vocalist in 3 bands, one of which is more active now than the others. It's Kardashev. Kardashev is my main gig. And then Never Breath and Viremia are 2 other bands that I've been involved with. Now, we take the reaction format, we break it down, we have some fun. We focus on education, so there's a lot of pausing, there's a lot of really cool, fun information. And a lot of people say they find it helpful, so maybe you'll find it helpful too. If you do, let us know in the comments below. Now, if you really love the content, like, share, subscribe. Makes me feel good, makes me feel great. And yeah, we have a Patreon with a Discord and events, and you get to vote on songs, and it's a whole hell of a lot of fun. So come on down and hang out. Now, we're going to do something slightly different. I have a message. This is a very important video. And so I have a message that I want to give a lot of vocalists, new vocalists especially, but, you know, well-trained vocalists as well. I want to kind of go over something. So if you want to just skip to the reaction and the analysis, feel free to hit this timestamp here. That'll help you out. But if you want a little bit of, if you want to hear me talk at you for a second, and it's very valuable information, I encourage you to hang out and hear me out here. So, the main way that I make my living is with vocal lessons. That's what I do. I teach people predominantly how to make these gurgly sounds. That's what I'm doing the majority of the time, all day, every day. And you know, ever since To the Hellfire came out, the vocalist landscape got pretty buzzy, and for very good reason. That's a very impressive song. It's a very impressive song with a lot of very impressive vocal takes and vocal techniques, right? Now, that's a good thing. I think it's good when songs come out like that because it pushes the meta. It encourages people who weren't in the hobby to get into the hobby, and who weren't in the art form to get in the art form, right? And that's good. So when To the Hellfire came out, I was like, oh, this is going to be something that pushes the envelope a little bit in a very good way. We need those things. However, one thing I've noticed that has started happening since Will Ramos made his big debut in Lorna Shore is I'll get new students and they'll say this to me. They'll say, I'll never be as good as him. And I hate that with a fiery passion. I don't hate them. But I hate that. And I want to talk to you about why. Because when I make these reaction videos, my goal is to educate you. My goal is to help you understand what they're doing, or to give you my best guess. Because sometimes it can be a little hard to tell, either because they're doing something really unique, which happens a lot, or because there are multiple vocal layers and there's instrumentation going on, and it can be kind of hard to hear through all that. But I want to talk to you about why I dislike that, because it's setting yourself up for failure. You're putting a ceiling above yourself that doesn't actually need to be there. And the fact of the matter is it's kind of true in a way that you'll probably never sound like Will Ramos. You could get close, right? Some vocalists do sound like each other. That's very valid. But I want you to participate in an exercise with me right now. Let's do this like Dora the Explorer style. I'll tell you to say something, you say it, right? But I'd like you to just repeat after me. Hey, what's up? How's it going? None of you all out there sounded like me, and I didn't sound like any of you. Why? Why didn't we sound like each other? I feel like I need to center up a little bit more here. Why didn't we sound like each other? We're using the same technique, right? True chord phonation. It's the same technique. Why don't we sound like identical carbon copies of each other? Well, because the shape of our bodies are so different, right? My mouth is a different shape. My sinuses are a different shape. Right? The bones and the muscle that are going to vibrate to carry my voice and to be heavily involved in resonance are different. Maybe I put my soft palate in a slightly different place. Maybe my soft palate is thicker or thinner. My vocal folds may be a different length than yours. Yours might be on average thicker and larger. Yours might on average be thinner and smaller, right? Maybe we all have accents. Like, I've got my pretty standard, good Lord, there are so many American accents, but mine is, very much like Arizona, California, right? You may have a French accent, an Austrian accent, a Mexican accent, right? So there are all these things that are making us sound very, very different from each other, even when we're using the same technique. So if you're looking to learn vocals, I encourage you to see performances like Will Ramos, and of course be inspired by them because they're inspiring. Be surprised by them. Be motivated by them, because that's probably what he was more interested in doing. I've never spoken to him directly myself, but I would imagine that he's not doing this to flex on anybody. He's doing it A, because it's satisfying, and B, because he wants to encourage other people. That would be my hope anyway, and I feel like that's probably true. So when you watch these videos, and when you watch this video here, look at it mostly as inspiration. Don't look at it as don't put a barrier in front of yourself, because there's a lot of talent wound up in you that you can tap into if you don't put hurdles that are unnecessary in front of you. Now, throughout the course of this video, I will be doing some of the same techniques he does. I'll be doing some techniques that are different than he does, but more representative of how I would try to emulate the sound, because he and I are different vocalists with different journeys and different backgrounds. This is not I'm not going to sound like him. I probably won't. Maybe I'll get a little close here and there, right? Maybe a technique I do will be somewhat similar, right? Maybe a technique that I do will be pretty different. But I think that that's something that we should start embracing when we see these huge vocalists that sometimes we think we can never hang with, right? A lot of my favorite vocalists sound nothing like each other. Imagine if they were all out there trying to sound like carbon copies of each other. Nobody would listen to deathcore or death metal anymore. I certainly wouldn't, right? Because there would be no nuance. There'd be no flair. So with that being said, that's my little soapbox sermon at the beginning. And I know that the length of the video might turn some people away, but I think that's something that's really important that we need to talk about, because there are so many good vocalists out there, and you absolutely have it within you to be an amazing vocalist. But I hate to break it to you, you'll probably never sound like Will Ramos, and that's probably a really good thing. So with that being said, also hopefully none of that came across as shade towards Will, because I think he's awesome. Again, I've never spoken to him, but his vocals are dope. So with that being said, thank you for your patience to those who sifted through all that. Let's go ahead. Let's check out Of the Abyss, Lorna Shore, one take vocal playthrough, Will Ramos. Here we go.
Let's get it.
So that's a really good place to stop and talk a little bit. One thing I want to mention, and the reason I'm mentioning it is because I guess it's important. Also, I've told plenty of people this, so they would know. I don't know, but I've seen this before. I've seen both of them before, which is part of the reason we held off on doing it. I haven't watched it since I think the day it dropped. But anyways, so if that matters to you, I don't know. Anyway, so one thing that I really like about Will Ramos, we'll dig a little bit deeper. I kind of want to just touch a broad level overview right now. One thing I really like about Will Ramos, and one thing I like about deathcore vocals as well, is when done in a way that holds a lot of nuance and has even storytelling capabilities to it, the vocals are extremely resonant, right? Now that may sound like kind of just like a glazed, like, well, of course they're resonant, Mark. Of course they're resonant. You're screaming, you're singing. However, there's a certain level of mastery that we hear in really good deathcore vocalists, and that is a mastery of vocal resonance and placing their vocal resonance in different areas. A lot of the times when we learn metal vocals, we're more focused on just making the distortion, and that's a really solid place to start. That's a really solid place to start, right? Like getting this sort of like getting that sound down is really valuable. But if we're going to lift these sounds upwards, right? Or we're going to make these crazy zombie like tunnely sounds, we need to have a pretty solid working understanding of what vocal resonance sounds, or what vocal resonance is, how it feels in the body, and how it works. Essentially what we're doing when we're utilizing vocal resonance, and sometimes this will take like a whole lesson or even two just to kind of get into the meat of, but oftentimes when we're working with vocal resonance, what we're doing is we're manipulating the shape of our mouth to create different tones, right? And this is a really great and cool thing to do. One thing you can do while you're home, if you're a metal vocalist brand new into the hobby, or you've been doing this forever, is make a lot of silly voices, right? Part of the way I learned to get my high vocals a little bit stronger was to talk in really funny voices, to sort of talk like this. And it really sounds pretty stupid, and my wife absolutely hates it. But if I take it, right, and I put my like high, very like palatopharyngeal distortion in, like where those folds in the back of my pharynx, the space in the back of the mouth, are closing in, it sounds very sinister. So I'm right here and I'm talking, and then I take this sound right here and I'm here. And you can create all sorts of really cool tones. He does that a lot with his lows. His lows are really cool because we'll get back to the video after this. As you can see, there's already a lot to talk about in 1 minute and 2 seconds. But his lows are really cool because a lot of the way that he's getting this really deep cavernous tone, he's got a very cavernous rounded tone, is through resonance manipulation, not so much just pulling his larynx down. Now, my lows don't get quite as cavernous, but he's got like this open mouth, drop jaw, curled tongue, and you can get a lot of really cool tones. Let's just go ahead and pick up where we left off. Also, I love the decked out 7B that he's got. Why did I forget the name of the mic? Jesus. But anyway, just the flare on that microphone is pretty hip, and I like it. Let's go. Okay, let's go. I'm just going to pause at the main breaks because that's the least disruptive to the song. And thankfully, this song does have a little bit of an ebb and flow to it that we can sort of dance around with. So another thing that I'm hearing a lot of now that I'm really digging into it, and I can hear it a little bit more forward from the music, right? Obviously, his voice is mixed in differently than it would be in the final product, because I would imagine on a vocal playthrough, you'd want your voice a little bit more forward, right? Forward in the mix. One thing I'm really hearing that's pretty cool is that he has like a very, very fry forward tone, right? Now, sometimes when I say these things, fry forward or false chord forward, people get a little confused. So I want to take a moment to kind of clarify what I mean. One analogy I use with my students a lot when we're starting to talk about projected screams, right? When we're starting to take, like if I was to use a false chord, right? Because that's more of what I do. I'm more of like a false chord dude. I have fry students, but in my music, it's mostly false chord, maybe because I'm lazy. I don't know. But if I was to take like a false chord sound, right? If I was to take this very low level, like old school beginning false chord sound, hey, that sound is made up of my actual, like the false chords, the vestibular folds coming together, narrowing the airflow, and then just rattling everything up above it, right? Now, once I start projecting it more, I have to add some compression to it. I have to add a little bit of flair, right? right? I have to start doing a little bit of extra work, right? So when we're projecting and when we're advancing our screams, we kind of need to think of it as multiple things working together. So the analogy that I was going to tell you is, imagine I'm going to give you $1 million. First, we know this is a fantasy because I ain't got $1 million to give anybody. And I give you $1 million and I say, okay, here is a leaf blower. I want you to go outside under this eucalyptus tree, because we got a ton of eucalyptus trees outside of where I live. They're beautiful and they smell so good. And I want you to point that leaf blower up, and I want you to aim it at any one leaf, just one, right? And I want only that leaf to rattle and shake. You can pick the leaf. You're not making $1 million. It's impossible, right? So if we name our vocal styles based on what is creating the distortion, it's a little tricky, because oftentimes there are multiple structures creating the distortion together. If we name our vocals based on what's compressing the airflow, not necessarily what's doing the majority of the distortion, even then it can be a little bit tricky, because our false chords are coming in. We may also bring in the arytenoids. We may also create a little blocking with the back of the tongue to hold on to our airflow, to hold some of the airflow in our mouths before we let it release, or to slow it down, maybe I should say. So the naming conventions of these vocal styles get a little bit tricky. So when I say things like fry forward, what I mean is, as I'm listening to it, I mostly hear fry tone, but I hear other things going on as well. And his tone is super even and super clear, right? It's like, for such an abrasive sound, it's incredibly smooth, right? It's like if you touched TV static and it felt like butter. Like maybe that's a good analogy to say. And a lot of the way that he's getting this is with really incredibly good breath control, right? We don't see him huffing and puffing. We don't really see him exerting any effort at all. And that's really important to do. A lot of times we will see vocalists, and I did a co-reaction with Justin from Tala, and he and I had a little bit of a conversation about this here on the channel. But oftentimes we see vocalists doing like these big faces, and like this can absolutely help your resonance, right? It can help you hit higher notes. However, a lot of that is also performative, right? So you may see a vocalist going like, you know, like making all these faces, but in reality, you want to be able to get to the point where you can kind of just speak your vocals. And a lot of what's going to work there, a lot of what's going to make that work is a very, very solid understanding of airflow and a very solid understanding of how to hold on to air versus just blasting it all out. I just talked a whole hell of a lot. So let's go back a little bit and then we'll talk a little bit more. How about 111? That sounds good. Let's actually talk about that little guttural or low he dropped in there. Yeah, so that's a really cool sound. And this is actually a great example of how this would be a really strong place of where we all might sound a little different. So I can't really see the shape of his mouth very much. But here's what I'm hearing. This is one of those moments where I have to kind of listen through and take my best stab, right? What I am able to see is a very low jaw. Right? Now I'm not pulling. You never really need to pull your jaw past where it's comfortable, right? Just drop it, stretch it out, relax it, and then the lips to me do not sound. From what I hear, the lips don't sound like they're doing the typical It sounds like it would be more of an with the tongue curled up, not touching the roof of the mouth, but slid back and detached slightly. Now, if I try to do something similar, it'll sound different, but using that same mouth shape, let me play around with it a little bit. Yeah, so that's a lot of what I'm hearing, and that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say he's got good control over his resonance, because he creates different types of lows by adjusting those little levers. The tongue, the main, your main articulators, right? Your lips, your tongue, your jaw's not really an articulator, but we can count it. Right? Anyways, let's keep going. I just thought that was a really sick low. That's all. I know I'm pausing a lot, but like, did you expect me to talk about Will Ramos and not have much to say? Come on, get real. One thing I want to talk about there, and this is really cool. This is really cool dynamics. This is good vocal writing. He's coming from these large sections of big hollow lows, and then he moves into a small, tighter guttural, right? I don't know what he was saying because you can't even understand what they're saying. But I listen, when it comes to intelligibility, I always tell my students, I only care as much as you care, right? Like if you just want to sound like a gurgly demon, that's fine. If you want every word to be articulate, that's fine. You do you, it's your art, right? But he goes from this like to more of an and that's just really nice contrast. That's another area where sometimes we get stuck. We're like, oh, lows are this. Lows have to be this. Why can't a low be this? Why not? Why not? Let's keep going. Listen, I don't know anything about drums, but like shout out to y'all's drummer. That's some good thumping. Okay, so another thing that I think is really interesting, I don't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm blind, which happens a lot. Like I'm the kind of guy who I ask my wife, where's the ketchup in the refrigerator? And I'm looking at it, but I don't see it. And then she mentions it and it like forms in front of my face. So maybe there's a lot of this and I've just somehow missed it. But I've only seen a handful of vocalists doing like this very exaggerated cheek movement during the vocals. It can be kind of hard to control, right? Obviously, unless you do it a lot, but it can actually add a lot of really cool texture and a lot of really cool sound to your vocals. Like for example, if I kind of take it and isolate it, if I take a guttural, like a very standard guttural, like that's just very standard guttural, and I like do little pulses of air. You can hear how it brings it a little bit lower, and it sort of like tightens up. Well, to my ear, it tightens up the distortion. It's also a really good way to handle working through syllables, right? So oftentimes when we're doing really speedy low vocals, it can be tricky because we want to articulate the syllables, but we also don't want to move too much away from our mouth shape because we'll lose that low position. You'll want to be right here, right? So you can kind of bounce your syllables off of those little puffs. I don't do much of that, so I probably wouldn't I probably wouldn't be able to do a very good example right now, but something to think about, right? Pretty cool stuff. Let's keep going. We're going to talk a lot about his highs here in a second, but I want to get through a little bit more of the song. So here we go. Listen, we'll listen to the whole thing. I get it. But like, to me, I forgot about this section, actually. Like I said, I've watched this before, but it's been a hot minute. To me, that's the most interesting part. I'm going to go back. I'm not really going to talk a whole lot about the lows here because he's doing a lot of the same stuff he's done in the song so far. It's just now his vocals are isolated, so they're very far forward and we're hearing more nuance. So I want you to just kind of listen and keep some of the things I've said in mind. We'll go back. But we're going to talk about this high, and we're going to talk about this shift to that like mid, again, very fry heavy forward sound. Maybe 321. Well, everyone, that was the section. Now, apparently he doesn't, somebody told me, I don't know, somebody told me that he doesn't do some of those gutturals in the album version. Some of them are highs. You let me know. Because it's been a while since I listened to the album. I don't really get a lot of time these days to just sit down and listen to music for my own enjoyment. So I'm pretty behind on literally everything. But I want to talk about the high because we haven't talked about highs yet. And I want to take about that pray to imitation gods is what I think he's saying. To me, that out of everything is one of the most impressive parts of the songs because he's doing a very fast, what we could really call like a register shift, right? When we're doing these really high vocals, when we're really cranking them up there. So like we've got our standard high, right? And again, this is more my standard high. Everyone out there might be doing things slightly differently. But if I'm here, nay, that's right there. That's kind of coming from this space, right? But we can crank that up. Now, if you're like me, this is going to rattle around a lot of spit in the back of your mouth. And so you'll probably have to like kind of get rid of it when you're done. As long as it's not flecking up mucus and spit from your vocal folds, it's rattling what's already there, kind of getting foamy. It's gross, I know. That's fine. You don't need to worry about that. It's what my ENT said anyway. So I go and get ENT checked every 6 months or so, and you should too if you're doing a lot of vocals. Anyway, so lifting that sound, right? That is like straight up out of the top of the head. Like we're essentially trying to move this distorted voice. I'm going to say this, and I want to say this with the caveat that it's not the best analogy. It is a little bit of a stretch, but this is the best way I can think to describe it right now. We are moving our voice. We're moving the distortion we are creating up into the head and supporting it very similarly to how we would do like someone would do like a power belt in a power metal band. Now, listen, I'm not a power metal belter, so I'm not going to do that right now because it's just like I've spent almost no time in my life learning how to do that. But you know, when we're belting, right? Like if I was to take like my clean voice and just like kind of bring it upward, hey, oh, hey, there we go. Hey, yo, hey, right? We have to have a lot of relaxation, and we're cranking up and thinking about our voice kind of coming up out of the top of the head. And we're pairing that with downward activation of the abdominal muscles in the pelvic floor, right? There you go. When we're cranking these screams up, we're really kind of thinking in that same vein. So, all that being said, what's making it even more cooler to me is how he snaps from that to that mid-tone, right? Snaps right on imitation, boom, God, right down to that mid-tone. And that's tough to do. Let me tell you, that is hard to do. So I want to see if I can hear that again. And then he has this really nice, now it sounds like he's, let me just see. Yeah, so much of that section is like, I feel like fast, like I feel like it's one of the drivers in Fast and the Furious driving like stick shift through the streets of New York or whatever. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but there's so many gear shifts in there. There's so many transitions and movements, and oftentimes when we talk about advanced vocals, people think, okay, let me pull back. Oftentimes when people think of advanced vocals, they equate that with tunnel throat, gutturals, and that's, that's fair, that's true, right? I think I kind of think the terms advanced, intermediate, beginner are a bit silly because all of our journeys are a little bit different, right? Some people find the advanced stuff really easy, but the basics very hard, which is true. So keep that in mind. But switching between those registers, moving from singing to screaming, moving from one scream to another, and not like from a high to a slightly different high, but a high to that mid or that mid to that low in such strong ways, that's some tough stuff. That takes a lot of practice and a lot of time. So if you're wanting to do that, master your individual screams first and then think about stitching them together. I'm a big believer in taking things slow and making sure that you're building your house from the bottom up. Build a solid foundation. All the construction workers are out here are going to tell me I'm missing a step. If I miss a step, call me out. Call me out in the comments below. You want to build your foundation first. Then you want to put your frame up. Then you want to kind of solidify that. You want to make sure your support beams are there. Your load-bearing walls and load-bearing support structures are strong. Then you can think about, putting on your roof and going from there. I know I missed some steps. Listen, I don't work in construction, but the analogy works. All right, the analogy works. All right, let's keep going. One other really cool thing, I'll say this and then we'll probably just finish the song out. One other really cool thing is that we're getting a couple different tongue positions, at least from what we can see on the tunnels. Now, for those of you who may be new to, maybe you're just now getting into metal vocals, tunnel throat, I like to describe it as a sound, right? Not a position, although you have to be in a certain position to get the sound. Anyway, a tunnel throat is essentially a very cavernous, a very resonant, almost an echoey sound, often used for mid and high vocals, but sometimes used in low vocals. And a tunnel throat generally involves creating a a secondary place for the resonance to exist within your mouth before it leaves. Now, this might sound kind of weird, and it is kind of weird, but the most common way that people do tunnels is to take their tongue, put it on the bottom teeth. And this is super easy. Like, okay, well, I don't want to say it's super easy because it can be difficult, but conceptually, there's not a lot to describe, right? Your tongue's on the bottom teeth. You tilt it forward slightly, so you're creating a little pocket underneath your tongue. Seal it up with the sides of your tongue. And you hear how my voice has this really echoey sound to it right there, right? That's the way that most people start. That's how I started, right? And that takes your vocal from like a yeah to a right, and it creates these really cool sounds. But there are other things you can do with it as well. I don't see him connecting his lips as much, right? Again, sometimes his mouth is behind the mic, so I can't see everything. But to me, it looks more like he's keeping it open and pulling the lips to the side. That gets you kind of a gurgly tone. I'm also seeing him kind of pushing his tongue to the side. Like that. I've never tried that before. Let's try it now. It's a little easier to articulate that way. Like, I feel like I could get through like sometimes when you're down here, it can muffle up your words maybe a little bit more than you want. Over here, just kind of playing around with it. Like this right here, I can talk a little bit easier, and it sounds neat. What if I do the cheek pull with that? Whoa, that's dirty. Whoa, that's dirty. All right, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be bringing educational value to you, and I'm just over here having a good time. Anyways, you can also do tunnels like kind of like this. Right? So there are all different ways to do it. So just play around with finding all these different tones. Anyways, let's we've been at this for a hot minute. Although 10 of these minutes are just me kibitzing at the beginning of the video. So here we go. He just looked into our souls. It was a little flirty. It was a little flirty look there, Will. He was flirting with the beholder. I never saw that part. I always backed it. Stupid. And I like it. That was hilarious. Yeah, I never noticed that silly little fart noise because I was like, oh, the song's over. Back button. Okay, cool. So, you know what? I close it, but let's leave it up because we got the little metal horns. Yeah, okay, so that was Will Ramos. One take of The Abyss. Very, very cool. Very inspiring. So much to talk about. Honestly, I could probably make that like a 2-hour video with all the things to go over. And I would have a lot of fun with it. So if you watch that and you're a new vocalist, hopefully you're coming away from this video feeling inspired to try your best to find your own voice and using some of these techniques as inspiration, not hurdles. Hopefully you're psyching yourself up. Like I said earlier, there is a lot of talent bundled up in you. It is true. And you can do many amazing things. They may not be exactly like the people you admire, but they can definitely take you to the same level. So your peers, right? That's kind of, think of yourself less as becoming a carbon copy and maybe make your goal being a peer. being a peer of this person, kind of being on their same level, right? Even that though, I think is a little like, just do vocals because you love them. Find a sound that you love because you love it. None of the vocalists that we love who pushed the envelope and you know, changed the meta of the vocal scene were doing it because they were trying to sound like somebody else. They did it because they were sitting around by themselves making stupid sounds that nobody else was making, right? So don't be afraid to make a bunch of stupid sounds. But beyond that, if you enjoyed the content, let me know in the comments below. If you had fun, if you learned something, let me know that as well. Like, share, subscribe, means a lot to me. And again, we do have a Discord with all sorts of events that are super cool and fun for you to join into. And that's all I have. I probably forgot to say something. But beyond that, as I always say, many thanks, much love, bye now.